Carrie is Brian De Palma's classic from 1976 that finally put him on the map as a director. It's based on Stephen King's first novel, and Arrow Films previously issued this on Blu-ray here in the UK. They've now reissued it as this 4K, and it's special. Very special. Yes, this is one of those rather special Arrow Films releases. I can't compare it to the Blu-ray because this set only comes with the 4K, but if it's not immediately perceptibly superior to that Blu-ray, then I will be astounded. The most important aspects are the technical details, and so we'll start with those. It's got an aspect ratio of 1:85:1. The default sound is mono, the original mono sound, but it does have DTS-HD 5.1. To get to that, you've got to go through the menu system to select that 5.1, and for me that was superior to the mono track. It was previously available on the DVD as a 5.1 Dolby Digital, and it was impressive on that, but on that DVD there was no option for the original mono. Where the surround sound comes into its own, I felt, was during the prom night sequence, just as we go into Carrie's head and she's imagining what people are doing, what they're saying, and she can hear her mother saying, "They're all going to laugh at you," and that went all round the room. It was hard to tell where it was coming from. Very good surround sound. So it's good on this 4K, but it was good on the DVD. And it should come as no surprise really that the image quality of that DVD is actually rather good, and that indicates a very good source. So the original camera negative was used, and this 4K really is something extra special. So just like having your own 35mm print, the sound is great. The density, the contrast is wonderful, the colour is natural just like a film print, and the definition is very good, sharp, but not always. There are a lot of opticals in this film. If you can remember the split screens, well, that's two elements of film, one on top of the other or one beside the other, and that means that two elements of film double the film grain. They're going to be shot by a third element of negative film to make the third, so increased grain, and that obviously softens the image, makes it look a bit noisier and not as good as the rest of it. But there are one or two dark sequences where the film grain is coarser. I think that's probably just how it was shot on the night or on the day, but it's also possible, I mean, this negative is getting on for 50 years old, so it's possible that parts of the negative had to be replaced by a dupe from the interpositive or the internegative to recreate the original negative in order to be able to use the original negative for master prints. So that's possible, but whatever. You probably won't notice those. I only notice them because I'm doing this for a review, otherwise I just accept it and enjoy the film. But I thought it was important to pick that out and bring it to your attention. But also there are one or two overexposed shots in this, but I think that was a stylistic choice. And being Brian De Palma, there's a lot of style in this film. It has got so many De Palma traits. The one famous long shot in this, the prom night, PJ Soles, who, if you wonder where you know her from, think 1978 John Carpenter's Halloween. Anyway, she's collecting ballot papers for the king and queen of the prom, and with a camera follows her all the way through. And I'm not sure how long this sequence runs, but it took them all day to plan for and rehearse. And it goes up to above the stage for what we know is going to happen. And just as it comes away from that bucket, just as the winners are announced, it zooms in on the winners on their table. All one shot, just amazing piece of filmmaking. I know there's a whole crew involved in that, but director De Palma dreamt it all up and made it happen. So he's just a very special filmmaker, and he's made some great films. But as I said, this was the one that put him on the map. Being as this is one of those special Arrow Films releases, a whole ton of extras. They're probably all on the previous Blu-ray release, so for those of you who have that special pack, probably nothing new to see here. Some of them were on the DVD, but there are a whole load of new ones for the Blu-ray and the 4K, and for me the most interesting, there's the talk with composer Pino Donaggio, who did a beautiful score for this, and this led on to multiple films with Brian De Palma, so they must have got on extremely well and thought very highly of each other. editor Paul Hirsch, and this is just wonderful because he talks about some of the specific elements that he had to edit together. He's not a fan of split screens, I don't think, but because he was working for Brian De Palma, he had to do this. And he talks about that one famous optical where Carrie, Sissy Spacek, has to move from one side of the frame to the other. And that's so she's on the right side of the frame, so she's looking at the action that's going to be happening with those wide eyes. Brilliant performance by Sissy Spacek, and gets an Oscar nomination for Best Actress in a horror film in 1976. Must have been unheard of, but maybe there was a certain horror film 3 years before where a young girl played a possessed little girl. Maybe that set the scene and people started to take notice of horror films. But Piper Laurie as the mother also gets an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress in the days when the Oscars really did mean something. So quite a classy film, and for anyone who hasn't seen it, well, there's a few scenes in this that are a bit difficult to look at. One early on in the shower room, which is what sets up the whole film, which I won't talk about, but I think most people probably know what that is. But there's some swearing in it and probably a few other things, you know, where slaughtering some pigs, which you don't see, but it's all implied and it's pretty horrible. So there's a few things to bear in mind. But when you think of horror films, you look at that period from 1973 up into the early 80s. The greatest horror movies ever made, aren't they? Just a fantastic time for horror movies. No wonder I liked them so much back then. I don't like them so much today, but I still like this period of horror movies. So if you don't have a copy of this in your collection and you're into home video discs, particularly 4K, I think this one has got to go on your list because the picture quality is just beautiful. And with that DTS 5.1 sound, well, put this on a big screen, you'll be taken back to the cinema in 1976, but not any cinema. You'll be in the West End of London watching master print. It really is that good. I'm so taken with it. I've known the film well. The first time I ever saw it was when Duran Films issued their first 400-foot cut down as part of the United Artists deal, and that was a strange deal, but they could do two 400-foot extracts, but they had to tell different stories. So of course us collectors then would have to work out how to cut those two reels into the right order, and that somehow made it even more special. But sadly my two 400-foot reels of that have faded a little lately, but still very special to have it. And I've been watching this film on the big screen for decades, so to see it now, well, as a Super 8 it was beautiful to look at, even a 1970s Super 8, but to see it today looking like a 35mm and possibly a master print 35mm is very, very special. The poster in this feels extremely high quality. It's one that could easily go on a wall, and if a suitable frame can be found, how about the miniature front of house set to go with it? All 8 of them, and that's unusual. It's not often you get all 8 of the front of house set. The book that comes with it is 40 pages, and although I haven't read it all yet, what I have read has been interesting, and there's some very nice photos and stills from the film. There is just the 4K disc in the case, as I've already mentioned, so no Blu-ray, but everything, all the extras are on that 4K disc. This apparently was a joint release between Shout Factory in America and Arrow Films here in the UK. I don't know if the discs differ at all, but whichever disc you have, I would recommend checking before you actually finally sit down to watch this film to make sure the HDR is as spot on as it can be. In here, I'm always tinkering to get the most filmic experience out of a 4K disc. I'm not so bothered with Blu-rays or DVDs, but 4K, well, just like going back to the cinema, aren't they, for the most part? So in here, I think for this one, I set the laser lamp in this video projector to around 60%. The HDR on the video projector was up full, and then the HDR on the player was set to around 50%. So those are just the sort of tweaks that I'm playing about with each disc, because they all do seem to vary, some more than others. And I think this one was fairly standard, but being as it was Carrie and I know it so well, I just wanted to make sure I had it looking as good as was possible. So I've long been a fan of the film, and in fact I didn't actually know there was a sequel until I got to know Trevor at Double Bill Movies, and he mentioned it to me, and soon after this arrived in the post. This is actually Carrie 2, Rage Carrie 2, issued by 88 Films on Blu-ray, and Trevor had told me I might be surprised because my attitude was, how can you do a sequel to Carrie? But do a sequel they did, and I mean, it's not a masterpiece or anything, but it's surprisingly rather good, and I very much enjoyed it, and it's got a good filmic look to it. It's not the best Blu-ray disc you're ever going to see, but it is nice, and it looked good in here up on the big screen, so might be worth a try if you're like me and you think you can't possibly redo Carrie or do a sequel to it. I think they've proved a couple of times you can't remake Carrie, but they managed to pull off a sequel, and Amy Irving, who plays Sue Snell in this again. She's one of the main cast of students in the original film. And there's some other great actors and actresses in Carrie, of course. Most notably are Nancy Allen and John Travolta, who went on to do another film with Brian De Palma. Blowout. What a masterpiece that was. So, it's just a great film all round. And I suppose the final thing to say, as if it's not enough, you get all this in the box and everything else, but it's even got a slip cover to protect it. It's got a reversible inlay, choice of the new artwork or the original poster art, and you've got the book and the poster and the front of house set. So just a wonderful release, and if this had come out last year, late last year, would have been rivaling a certain Second Sight Films release for first place as far as I was concerned. Anyway, I think that brings us to the end. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like and perhaps consider subscribing so I'll be encouraged to carry on creating similar content to this in the future. Until the next video, bye bye for now.